The silver ship touched down in the Montana forest without a sound. Commander Hollis stepped onto Earth soil and breathed in the alien air. His scales shifted color with satisfaction. This planet would be easy to conquer. The dominant species called humans looked weak and soft in all the surveillance images. Ruby Watson was 7 years old and completely unaware that aliens had just landed 300 yards from her favorite playing spot. She was too busy trying to convince Scraps to wear the tiny hat she had made from an old sock. Scraps was having none of it. The honey badger growled and swatted the hat away with one paw. "Come on, Scraps," Ruby said, picking up the hat again. "You'll look so cute." Scraps made a sound that was half growl, half snort. He was 2 feet long, weighed about 25 pounds, and feared absolutely nothing in the entire world. Ruby had found him as a baby 2 years ago, injured and alone. Her mother, being a veterinarian, had saved his life. Now he followed Ruby everywhere, which her parents accepted with the tired resignation of people who knew they couldn't change it. 12 Dravian soldiers moved through the forest in standard formation. They wore armor that could stop most projectile weapons. Their scanners showed one small life form ahead. Probably harmless. Officer Nina checked her readings twice. "Commander, the life form appears to be a juvenile," she said through her helmet communicator. "Perfect," Hollis replied. "We can study it before moving to larger population centers. Prepare specimen collection tools." They emerged into the small clearing where Ruby was still arguing with Scraps about fashion. She looked up and her eyes went wide. Her mouth formed a perfect O of surprise. "Wow," she whispered. The alien stopped. The small human child showed no fear. She simply stared at them with huge, curious eyes. Her clothing was odd, covered in colorful patterns of what appeared to be earth animals. She held something in her hands that looked like fabric. "Hello, small human," Hollis said, his translator device rendering his words into English. "Do not be afraid. We mean you no harm. Are you from space?" Ruby asked, standing up. "Like actual space? That's so cool." Hollis blinked his inner eyelids in confusion. The child was excited, not frightened. Perhaps human young were too primitive to understand danger. He gestured to 2 of his soldiers. "Collect the specimen gently," he ordered. The soldiers moved forward, reaching for Ruby with their clawed hands. They never saw Scraps coming. The honey badger moved like lightning, all teeth and fury and completely unreasonable rage. He hit the first soldier at knee height, claws tearing through the armor's joint seals. The soldier screamed and fell backward. The second soldier tried to kick Scraps away. This was a terrible mistake. Scraps latched onto the soldier's leg and held on, biting and clawing with the single-minded determination of an animal that had never lost a fight in its entire life. "Scraps, no!" Ruby shouted, but there was no stopping him now. 3 more soldiers tried to pull the creature off their companion. Scraps somehow managed to fight all of them at once. He was a whirlwind of teeth and claws and horrible growling sounds. One soldier got too close and Scraps went for his face, cracking the helmet's faceplate. "Fall back," Nina screamed.
"Fall back now."
The soldiers retreated, dragging their injured with them. Scraps chased them for about 10 feet, then trotted back to Ruby, looking extremely pleased with himself. He wasn't even breathing hard. Ruby picked him up, which was the only time Scraps ever allowed himself to be held. "You can't attack people, Scraps. That's bad." Scraps licked her face, which was his version of an apology. The aliens had regrouped 30 yards away. They stared at the small human child holding what their database was now identifying as a honey badger. The database entry was brief but terrifying. Honey badgers were known across the galaxy. They appeared in warning texts for explorers. They were pound for pound one of the most dangerous creatures ever cataloged. "The human young keeps a honey badger as a companion," Nina said, her voice shaking. "Commander, honey badgers are Class 5 aggressive predators. I can read the database." "Officer," Hollis snapped. Though his own scales had gone pale with shock, Ruby walked toward them carrying Scraps. The aliens tensed, weapons half raised. She stopped a few feet away and smiled. "Sorry about Scraps," she said cheerfully. "He doesn't like it when strangers grab me. Mom says he's protective." "Are your friends okay?" "Your creature injured 3 of my soldiers," Hollis said stiffly. "You tried to grab me," Ruby pointed out with the flawless logic of a 7-year-old. "Scraps was just doing his job. He's my best friend." "Well, him and Lucy and Duke, but they're dogs, so they're at home." "You have more creatures?" Nina asked weakly. "Sure. We have 2 dogs, 4 cats, chickens, and Scraps. Oh, and fish, but they're boring." Ruby tilted her head. Why are you here? Are you visiting Earth? Hollis realized they had made a terrible error. This planet's dominant species bonded with apex predators. They kept them as family members. What kind of species did that? What kind of species could do that? We are conducting a survey, he said carefully. That's cool. Hey, do you want to see my house? It's not far. Mom makes really good cookies. Ruby started walking, assuming they would follow. Scraps looked back at the aliens. His eyes were black and empty of mercy. Then he made a sound that was somehow worse than his earlier growling. It was almost like laughter. The 12 most dangerous soldiers in the Dravian military looked at each other. Then, not knowing what else to do, they followed the small human child and her nightmare creature through the forest. Behind them, their ship's AI was already composing an urgent message to command. It began with 3 words that would change the course of the invasion. Abort all plans. Ruby led the aliens back to their own ship, which confused them greatly. She talked the entire way, pointing out interesting trees and rocks and explaining the difference between a Douglas fir and a ponderosa pine. The aliens understood none of it but were too unsettled to interrupt. This is your spaceship, right? Ruby asked when they reached the clearing. Can I see inside? Please, please, please. Commander Hollis looked at Officer Nina. Nina looked at the honey badger, which was watching them with those dead, merciless eyes. She looked back at Hollis and shrugged. Very well, Hollis said, but only briefly. Ruby squealed with delight and ran up the boarding ramp. Scraps waddled after her, claws clicking on the metal. The sound made every soldier tense. Something about those clicking claws felt like a countdown to violence. Inside the ship, Ruby's eyes grew even wider. She touched everything despite repeated warnings not to. She asked questions faster than the translator could process them. Why was this button blue? What did that screen show? Could the ship go faster than light? Did they have bathrooms in space? What did they eat? Do you have peanut butter on your planet? Ruby asked, digging through her backpack. Because peanut butter makes everything better. She pulled out a sandwich in a plastic bag. It had been slightly squashed. She also produced a juice box and a small bag of carrot sticks. This was apparently her lunch. You're welcome to share, she said, breaking the sandwich in half. She offered one piece to Hollis. The commander stared at the offered food. In Dravian culture, sharing food was a sign of trust and friendship. This small human was offering him her own meal. He had tried to kidnap her 15 minutes ago. She either had no survival instincts or was playing a social game he didn't understand. He took the sandwich. It was sticky and strange. Ruby beamed at him. Scraps only eats meat, Ruby explained, tearing off a piece for the honey badger. He's what Mom calls an obligate carnivore. That means he can't eat plants. But he's not picky about what kind of meat. One time he ate a dead rabbit he found in the woods and Mom got really mad. Scraps devoured his portion in 2 bites and looked around for more. Several soldiers stepped back. Nina was scanning the ship's database for information about Earth and humans. What she found was disturbing. Humans were persistence hunters. They could run for hours without stopping, literally chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They healed remarkably fast. They could survive in almost any climate. They had spread across their entire planet in just a few thousand years, and they made friends with their planet's predators. Commander, Nina said quietly, I need to show you something. Hollis excused himself. Ruby didn't notice. She was trying to teach one of the soldiers how to play a clapping game. The soldier looked terrified. Nina pulled up images on her datapad. Dogs, cats, horses, falcons, even some species called ferrets and snakes. Humans kept all of them as companions. They bred wolves into hundreds of varieties of dogs. They domesticated cats that still retained most of their hunting instincts. They rode animals that could kick hard enough to break bones. They turned predators into family, Nina whispered. What kind of species does that? A species at the top of their food chain, Hollis replied grimly. Sir, we need to contact command. And tell them what? That we're being held hostage by a child and her pet? Are we being held hostage? Nina asked. They both looked back at Ruby. She was now demonstrating what Scraps could do. She placed a plastic container on the floor. Scraps attacked it with savage efficiency, tearing it apart in seconds. Ruby clapped. He can open any container, she said proudly. One time he got into the refrigerator and ate all of Dad's leftover steak. Dad was so mad but also kind of impressed. The soldier she had been talking to was pressed against the wall, trying to appear invisible. Okay, watch this, Ruby said. She made a gesture with her hand. Scraps immediately climbed onto a nearby chair, then jumped to a console, then to a higher ledge. He moved with liquid grace, finding purchase where it seemed impossible. He can climb anything, Ruby explained. Trees, fences, walls, furniture. Mom says he's like a furry ninja. A furry ninja, Nina thought. A Class 5 predator that could climb anything and open any container. That lived with humans. That protected human children, Ruby, Hollis said carefully. Does your family know where you are? Probably not yet, Ruby said. I left before lunch. They'll come looking for me soon, though. They always do. Are your parents warriors? Ruby laughed. Dad was in the army before I was born. Now he fixes tractors and stuff. Mom's a vet. That means she's an animal doctor. A soldier and a medical professional, trained in combat and biology. Hollis felt his confidence in this mission draining away like water through his claws. Ruby, we should take you home, he said. But I want to stay here. This is so cool. Can you tell me about your planet? Do you have oceans?
What color is your sky?
Do you have honey badgers? No, Nina said quickly. We do not have honey badgers. Nothing like them. That's sad, Ruby said sincerely. Everyone should have a Scraps. The thought of honey badgers spreading across the galaxy made Nina's blood run cold. A beeping sound came from one of the consoles. A soldier checked it and went very still. Commander, the soldier said, we're receiving an emergency transmission from the command ship. Put it through. The voice of Admiral Grant filled the cabin. Commander Hollis, report status immediately. We detected weapons fire at your location. There was no weapons fire, Admiral. There was a honey badger. Silence on the other end. Then, repeat that, Commander. A honey badger, sir. Attached to a human child. It attacked our specimen collection team. More silence. Then Admiral Grant said something very unprofessional. Ruby perked up. Is that your boss? Can I talk to them? Before anyone could stop her, she walked to the communication console. Hi, I'm Ruby. Your people are visiting Earth. They're really nice. Well, except they tried to grab me, but Scraps fixed that. Are you coming to visit too? In orbit, Admiral Grant stared at his communication officer. The officer stared back helplessly. Hello, Ruby, the Admiral said slowly. I am Admiral Grant. Are you safe? Super safe. Commander Hollis gave me half his sandwich. Well, I gave him half my sandwich, but he took it, so that's basically the same thing. Ruby, are your parents nearby? Not yet, but they will be.
Hey, do you want to come to dinner?
Mom always makes extra. Admiral Grant made a decision. Commander Hollis, new orders. Stay with the human child. Protect her. Do not under any circumstances allow harm to come to her. Sir, Hollis said, confused. If anything happens to that child, we'll have an entire planet of persistence-hunting, predator-bonding warriors coming for us. Keep her safe and happy until her parents arrive. That's an order. The transmission ended. Hollis looked at Ruby, who was now trying to give Scraps her juice box. The honey badger sniffed it suspiciously. Ruby, Hollis said tiredly, would you like to see the engine room? Ruby's face lit up like a star going nova. 2 hours had passed since Ruby was supposed to be home for lunch. Robert Watson checked his watch again and felt his jaw tighten. Anne was already putting on her hiking boots by the door. She moved with the calm efficiency of someone preparing for a serious situation. She's probably just lost track of time, Anne said, but her voice was tight. With Scraps, Robert added, which means she's safe but possibly causing chaos. They both grabbed their packs. Robert's contained a first aid kit, emergency supplies, and his old service pistol. Anne's held veterinary equipment and a tranquilizer gun. Neither of them mentioned the weapons. They'd had Ruby late in life after Robert's military service and during Anne's veterinary career. They knew exactly how dangerous the world could be. Her tracker shows she's near Pine Ridge, Robert said, checking his phone. They'd put a GPS tracker in Ruby's backpack after the third time she'd wandered off following a deer. That's 3 miles out. She's never gone that far before. They moved through the forest like people who knew every inch of it. Robert's training hadn't faded. Anne's knowledge of animal behavior and tracking made her nearly as effective. They found Ruby's trail easily. Small footprints and the distinctive claw marks of a honey badger. Then they found something else. Larger prints. Strange patterns in the soil. Broken branches at odd heights. Robert, Anne said quietly, pointing. The silver ship sat in the clearing like a gigantic teardrop. It was clearly not human technology. Robert's hand moved to his pistol. Anne readied her tranquilizer gun. They approached carefully, using the trees for cover. Ruby, Robert called out, his voice carrying that special tone parents use when they're scared but trying not to show it. The ship's boarding ramp was down. Ruby appeared at the top, waving enthusiastically. "Mom! Dad, look. Actual aliens. They have a spaceship." Robert and Anne exchanged a look that contained an entire conversation. Their daughter had apparently made first contact with extraterrestrial life. Of course she had. Ruby bounded down the ramp with Scraps at her heels. Behind her came Commander Hollis and Officer Nina, moving slowly with their hands visible and empty. Robert noticed they kept watching Scraps with the wariness of people who'd learned respect the hard way. "Ruby Watson, you were supposed to be home 2 hours ago," Anne said in her mom voice. "I know, I'm sorry. But Mom, they're from space. Actual space. And their ship has an engine that bends space-time, and they've been to 17 different planets, and they have 3 suns where they're from." Robert kept his eyes on the aliens. They were tall, scaled, clearly built for combat. Their armor was damaged in places. He recognized claw marks. He looked down at Scraps, who was sitting calmly next to Ruby. The honey badger had blood on his claws. "Your people tried to grab my daughter," Robert said. His voice was flat and cold. "It was a misunderstanding," Hollis said quickly. "We meant no harm. We were attempting to conduct a survey and did not understand human family structures. You tried to kidnap a child. We ceased immediately when we understood our error." Anne stepped forward, her medical training making her observe the aliens with clinical precision. She noted their breathing rate, the color changes in their scales, the way they positioned themselves defensively. She saw injuries on 3 of the visible soldiers. "Scraps attacked you," she said. "The creature defended the young one," Nina confirmed. "We were unprepared for such aggression from something so small." "That's Scraps," Anne said dryly. "He doesn't let anyone touch Ruby. Ever. You're lucky he didn't do worse." "We have since learned that honey badgers are known throughout the galaxy," Hollis said. "We did not expect to find one bonded to a human child." Robert's expression didn't change. "Ruby, come here." Ruby walked over with Scraps. Robert knelt down and checked her over with practiced hands, looking for any sign of injury or distress. She seemed fine. Happy, even. That somehow made it worse. His daughter had been in potential danger and hadn't even known it. "Did they hurt you?" he asked quietly. "No, Dad, they're really nice. Commander Hollis showed me the engine room, and Officer Nina explained how their translator works, and they have this cool food that's like pudding, but it changes flavor while you eat it." Anne had moved closer to the aliens, still observing. "You're Dravian," she said suddenly. "I've read about your species in the xenobiology papers that got leaked last year." The aliens went very still. Hollis spoke carefully. "You have information about us?" "Limited information from long-range observations. Enough to know you're a military-focused culture that's conquered 17 systems." Anne's voice was pleasant, like she was discussing the weather. "Which means this isn't a friendly visit." The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Ruby looked confused. Robert stood up, his hand still near his pistol. "We should discuss this inside your ship," Robert said. Out of Ruby's hearing, "Dad, I want to stay with my new friends." "Ruby, take Scraps and go count the different types of trees around the clearing," Anne said. "I want a full report for your homeschool science project." Ruby recognized the tone. It meant the adults needed to talk about grown-up things. She sighed dramatically but obeyed, wandering off with Scraps. The honey badger kept looking back at the aliens like he hoped they'd try something. Inside the ship, the 4 adults faced each other. Robert spoke first. "How many ships do you have?" Hollis hesitated. Nina answered. 12 in orbit. 300 more 2 days away. "Here to invade," Robert said. "It wasn't a question. That was the plan," Hollis admitted. "Before we encountered Ruby and learned about honey badgers and realized what humans actually are." "And what are we?" Anne asked. "Apex predators who domesticate other apex predators. Tool users with advanced technology and social structures. A species that somehow turned wolves into dogs and keeps Class 5 aggressive predators as family pets." Nina's voice shook slightly. "You're terrifying." Robert almost smiled. "We're also parents, and you threatened our child. We have reported to our command that Earth is not a suitable target for conquest," Hollis said quickly. "We are recommending immediate withdrawal and permanent protection status." "Because of Ruby and Scraps?" Anne asked. "Because if a human child shows no fear and befriends a honey badger, we cannot imagine what your adults are capable of when threatened." Hollis's scales had gone pale. In our culture, young are precious and protected. We now understand human young are the same. If we had harmed Ruby, what would you have done? Robert's eyes went cold and dark. Everything necessary. Anne touched his arm gently. But Ruby's fine. And these people are leaving. We need to take Ruby with us when we go, Robert said. Now. Of course, Nina said. We also need to request that Earth's governments be notified of our presence for formal first contact protocols. That will happen, Anne assured them. But it will happen with humans in control of the situation, not you. Ruby's voice carried from outside. 37 trees, Mom. I counted 37 different trees. Robert looked at the aliens one last time. You get one chance to leave peacefully. You have until sunset. After that, you're dealing with more than just one family and a honey badger. Understood, Hollis said. For what it's worth, Ruby is remarkable. In any species. She's 7, Anne said. She's supposed to be remarkable. That's what children do. They left the ship. Ruby was waiting with Scraps, both covered in dirt and pine needles. She waved at the aliens. Bye, Commander Hollis. Bye, Officer Nina. Come back and visit when you're not trying to invade. The aliens waved back weakly. Robert took Ruby's hand and they walked back toward home. Anne walked beside them, already on her phone calling contacts in the government. Behind them, Scraps looked back one last time at the silver ship. He made that sound again, the one that was almost like laughter. Ruby would not stop talking about her new friends from space. At dinner that evening, she told the story 3 times while her parents exchanged worried looks over her head. Robert had spent the afternoon on encrypted calls with his old military contacts. Anne had contacted the CDC, NASA, and several government agencies whose acronyms she couldn't pronounce. They said they're leaving tomorrow, Ruby said, pushing her broccoli around her plate. But I asked if they wanted to come to dinner first. Was that okay? You invited aliens to our house for dinner, Anne said slowly. They seemed hungry and sad. They kept talking about failed missions and angry admirals, and I felt bad for them. Robert rubbed his temples. Ruby, sweetheart, these are beings who tried to invade our planet, but they're not anymore. They said Earth is too dangerous. Because of us. Ruby beamed like this was a compliment. Isn't that cool? Before either parent could respond, there was a knock at the door. Not a doorbell. An actual knock, like someone wasn't sure how the doorbell worked. Robert checked his watch. 6:30 p.m. He told Hollis they had until sunset. The aliens were early. He opened the door. Commander Hollis and Officer Nina stood on his porch looking deeply uncomfortable. They'd removed their armor and wore simple clothing that looked vaguely like business casual. They carried a container that glowed softly. Ruby invited us to dinner, Hollis said. We did not wish to be rude. Robert stared at them. Then he laughed, which surprised everyone, including himself. Of course you did. Come in. The aliens had to duck under the doorframe. Inside, they stared at everything with the fascination of xenoanthropologists in a living museum. The house was full of things that told the story of the Watson family. Pictures on the walls, Ruby's drawings on the refrigerator, a rack near the door holding various coats and hats and weapons. Lots of weapons. Nina noticed them immediately. An old rifle mounted over the fireplace, a compound bow hanging on the wall, several knives displayed in a shadow box with medals and military decorations. A gun safe in the corner that was clearly well used. You keep weapons in your home, she observed. For hunting and protection, Robert said. This is rural Montana. We have bears, mountain lions, wolves. Also old habits from my service days. Service days? Hollis asked. I was in the Army for 12 years. Special Forces. Robert said it casually, but both aliens understood the implications. The human male was a trained warrior who had chosen to leave combat to raise a family. Ruby ran in from the living room with Scraps. You came. Mom, they came. Can they meet Duke and Lucy now? Let's not overwhelm our guests, Anne said, but it was too late. 2 dogs bounded into the room. Duke was a German shepherd, 90 pounds of muscle and loyalty. Lucy was a border collie, smaller but intense with weird blue eyes that seemed to see everything. The dogs stopped when they saw the aliens. Their body language shifted immediately to alert. Duke moved between Ruby and the strangers. Lucy circled around to flank them. It was pack behavior, coordinated and protective. Scraps, for once, didn't attack. He seemed to sense Ruby wasn't in danger, but he watched the aliens with those black, merciless eyes. Sit, Ruby commanded. Both dogs sat immediately. These are my friends. Be nice? Duke relaxed slightly. Lucy kept staring. Your dogs are trained, Hollis observed. All our animals are trained, Anne said. Even Scraps, though he chooses when to obey. Come on, dinner's ready. The dining room table was set for 6. Ruby had insisted on using the good plates. Anne brought out pot roast with potatoes and carrots, homemade bread, and a salad. The aliens stared at the food like it might attack them. This is animal meat, Nina said. Beef, Anne confirmed. From cows. Do you eat meat on your world? We do, but it's synthesized. We haven't hunted animals for food in thousands of years. We still hunt here, Robert said. It's part of wildlife management. We take what we need, use every part of the animal, maintain the ecosystem balance. He served the aliens small portions. They ate carefully, uncertain about the taste. Ruby chattered on about her day, completely comfortable with extraterrestrials at her dinner table. Scraps sat under her chair, occasionally receiving scraps despite the irony. Ruby says you're a soldier, Hollis said to Robert. A warrior. Was. Now I'm a mechanic and a father. But you could return to combat if needed. If my family was threatened, yes. Robert's voice was matter-of-fact. So could Anne. She's trained in field medicine and emergency response. Most people in this area have survival skills. We help each other when there's trouble. Community defense, Nina said. Pack behavior extended beyond family units. We call it being good neighbors, Anne said dryly. But yes, if you want to be technical about it. Ruby leaned forward, her elbows on the table despite her mother's disapproving look. Commander Hollis, why did you want to invade Earth anyway? The adults went silent. Hollis looked at his plate. Resources, he said finally. Your planet is rich in minerals and water. We thought it would be easy to take what we needed. But you changed your mind, Ruby said. We learned we were wrong about humans. We thought you were weak because you look soft. We didn't understand that soft can hide strong. Like your mother's medical knowledge that could identify our biological weaknesses, or your father's combat training that never goes away, or you befriending a honey badger like it's normal. It is normal, Ruby said, confused. For humans, Nina said, not for anyone else. Most species run from honey badgers. Humans adopt them. Anne rose to clear the plates. We also adopt wolves, which you call dogs. We domesticated animals that hunt in packs and could easily kill us. We turned them into family members who protect our children. She returned with dessert, apple pie with ice cream. Ruby explained ice cream to the confused aliens while Scraps begged shamelessly for pie crust. May I ask a question? Hollis said. Why are you allowing us to leave peacefully? We came to invade your world. We threatened your child. Most species would demand our execution. Robert and Anne looked at each other. One of those wordless married conversations happened in the space of a heartbeat. Because you learned, Robert said. You made a mistake, realized it, and changed your behavior. That's what intelligent beings do. Also, Ruby likes you and we trust her judgment. I'm 7, Ruby pointed out. I don't always have good judgment. Remember when I tried to bring home that baby skunk? That was different, Anne said. Though the skunk incident did teach us all a valuable lesson about wildlife. The evening continued. Ruby showed the aliens her room, which was decorated with posters of planets and astronauts. Her bookshelf held everything from picture books to advanced science texts. Her closet contained hiking gear, climbing equipment, and a small first aid kit. You train your young for survival from birth, Nina observed. We teach our children to be capable, Anne corrected. To think, to question, to handle emergencies. Ruby knows basic first aid, can identify edible plants, and understands animal behavior. Those are just life skills. On our world, young ones are sheltered until they reach maturity. Different approaches, Robert said, but both protect what matters most. As the aliens prepared to leave, Ruby hugged each of them. They went very still, uncertain how to respond. Then Hollis carefully patted her head with one clawed hand. You are extraordinary, Ruby Watson, he said. Never change. I'm going to be an astronaut, Ruby announced. So maybe I'll visit your planet someday. The aliens looked genuinely pleased by this idea. They left shortly after, returning to their ship under the Montana stars. Robert and Anne stood on the porch watching them go. Think they'll really leave? Anne asked. Yes, Robert said. We scared them properly. Not with weapons or threats. With dinner and hospitality and a 7-year-old girl who makes friends with honey badgers. Inside, Ruby was getting ready for bed. Scraps was already curled up on her pillow, taking up more space than any 25-pound animal should. She'd remember this day forever. The day Earth met aliens and everyone stayed for dinner. In the silver ship, Hollis sent his final report to the Admiral. It included one sentence that would change the Dravian Empire's policy forever. Humans are not prey, not enemies, but possibly friends, if approached with respect. 3 days after the dinner, everything went wrong. Admiral Grant had accepted Commander Hollis's recommendation to abort the invasion. The 12 ships in orbit had begun preparations to leave. The 300 ships that were still 2 days away had received orders to turn back. Everything was going according to the peaceful plan. Then General Stroud received the reports. He was the head of the Dravian Military Council, and he did not believe in retreating from soft-looking prey species. He overruled Admiral Grant's orders and sent a detachment of his personal guard to Earth. Their mission was to capture specimens for study and prove that humans were not the threat Hollis claimed. They landed at dawn in the Watsons' backfield. 20 soldiers in full combat armor with weapons designed to subdue without killing. They wanted live specimens. They wanted proof. They wanted to show the Council that Earth was weak. Ruby was in the yard playing fetch with Duke and Lucy when the second ship landed. She stopped mid-throw, the ball forgotten in her hand. Scraps, who had been digging for mice, immediately went on alert. The dogs began barking. The soldiers emerged in formation, moving with military precision. Their leader, Captain Morris, spotted the small human child. Perfect. The same child from the reports. They would collect her, demonstrate Earth's weakness, and be back in orbit within an hour. Secure the specimen, Captain Morris ordered. 10 soldiers moved toward Ruby. She backed up toward the house. The dogs flanking her, Scraps positioned in front. She wasn't smiling this time. She looked scared. "Mom, Dad!" she screamed. Robert Watson was in the garage. He heard his daughter's scream and reacted on pure instinct. Years of training snapped into place. He grabbed his rifle and was moving before conscious thought caught up. Anne was in the house. She heard Ruby too. She grabbed her medical bag and the tranquilizer gun and ran. What happened next would be studied in the Dravian Military Academy for decades. The soldiers reached for Ruby. Scraps attacked first, going for knee joints and exposed areas just like before. But this time he wasn't fighting alone. Duke hit one soldier from the side, 90 pounds of protective fury. Lucy went for another, using her smaller size to dart in and out, biting and dodging. Ruby ran toward the house. 2 soldiers blocked her path. Duke took one down with a flying leap. Lucy tripped the other. Ruby kept running. Robert came around the corner of the garage at a dead run. He fired once into the air, a warning shot that made every soldier freeze. Then he moved between the soldiers and his daughter, rifle raised. "Back away from my child," he said. His voice was calm. That was somehow worse than shouting. Anne emerged from the house. She evaluated the situation in seconds, medical training making her see weak points and vulnerabilities. She raised her tranquilizer gun. "Those darts are loaded with enough sedative to drop a bear," she called out. "I know exactly where to hit to put you down without killing you. Leave now." Captain Morris made his first mistake. He tried to intimidate them. "We are Dravian Special Forces. You are 2 humans with primitive weapons. Surrender or be subdued." Robert's expression didn't change. "This is Montana. We're armed, trained, and protecting our family. You're the ones who should surrender." The soldiers moved to attack. Robert fired, hitting one soldier's weapon and destroying it. Anne shot another with a tranquilizer dart that pierced the armor's joint seals. The soldier went down hard. Duke and Lucy continued their coordinated assault on any soldier who got too close to Ruby. Scraps was a whirlwind of claws and teeth and terrible sounds. Then, the neighbors arrived. Tom Chen heard the gunshot. From his property half a mile away, he grabbed his hunting rifle and his emergency radio. Within 3 minutes, he'd alerted 6 other families. Rural Montana took care of its own. When one neighbor was in trouble, everyone responded. They came from every direction. Farmers and ranchers and retired veterans, all armed, all ready to defend the Watsons. 15 humans surrounded 20 alien soldiers within 5 minutes. The aliens suddenly found themselves outmaneuvered and outgunned. "I suggest you get back on your ship," said Tom, his rifle steady. "We don't want to hurt you, but we will protect our people." Captain Morris looked around. The humans had taken tactical positions without communicating. They moved like they'd done this before. They were coordinated, calm, and absolutely serious. His soldiers were designed for combat against militaries, not against a community of armed civilians who protected each other. "Stand down," he ordered his troops. But one soldier didn't listen. He lunged for Ruby, thinking he could grab her and use her as leverage. It was his final mistake. Robert moved faster than the alien expected. He blocked the grab, twisted, and had the soldier on the ground in 2 seconds. Anne was there immediately, tranquilizer dart ready. Duke and Lucy circled, growling. Scraps climbed onto the downed soldier's chest and made direct eye contact. The soldier went completely still. "Touch my daughter again," Robert said quietly, "and the honey badger is the least of your problems." Ruby was crying now, but not from fear, from anger and confusion. "You ruined it," she yelled at the soldiers. Commander Hollis and Officer Nina were nice. "They learned. They understood. Why can't you?" Her tears hit harder than any weapon. Every human in that field had the same expression. They were furious at these aliens who'd made a child cry. The temperature of the situation dropped below freezing. Anne went to Ruby and held her. "Shh, baby. It's okay. We've got you." Tom Chen spoke into his radio. "Call the authorities, federal and military. Tell them we have a situation." Captain Morris realized how badly he'd miscalculated. These weren't primitive beings. They were humans. They had community structures that responded to threats with organization and speed. They had weapons and training. They had animals that fought beside them. They had children who were protected by entire populations. "We're leaving," he said. "We meant no permanent harm." "You meant to kidnap a child," Anne said coldly. "In any culture, that's worth killing over." The soldiers retreated to their ship. The humans stayed in position until the ship lifted off. Only then did Robert lower his rifle. The neighbors started checking on the Watsons, offering support, making sure everyone was okay. Sheriff Davis arrived 20 minutes later. Behind him came military vehicles. Behind them came black SUVs with government plates. The situation was escalating beyond a local incident. But first, Robert and Anne took Ruby inside. They sat on the couch with her between them. Duke and Lucy pressed against her legs, Scraps in her lap. She was still crying. "I thought they were my friends," Ruby said. "I thought they learned." "Some did," Robert said gently. Commander Hollis and Officer Nina learned. These were different aliens. Different people make different choices. But they wanted to take me. "They failed," Anne said firmly. "Because we're here. Because the neighbors are here. Because Scraps and Duke and Lucy are here. Because we're family and family protects each other. And because you're strong," Robert added. "You ran when you needed to. You called for help. You did everything right." In orbit, Admiral Grant was having a very unpleasant conversation with General Stroud. The general had just watched the entire incident through the soldiers' helmet cameras. He'd seen humans respond to a threat with coordinated violence, community defense, and protective fury over a single child. "Recall all forces," he said, his voice hollow. "Mark Earth as prohibited territory." "Full protection status, sir," Admiral Grant said. "Did you see what they did? Did you see how fast they organized? How they fought for one child? Imagine if we actually invaded. Imagine millions of these humans all fighting like that, all protecting each other." General Stroud looked old and tired. "We can't win against a species that fights like that for their young." Back on Earth, Ruby had stopped crying. She was hiccuping occasionally, but mostly she was okay. Scraps was purring, which was really just aggressive breathing, but it helped. Duke and Lucy hadn't moved from their protective positions. "What happens now?" Ruby asked. "Now the government handles first contact properly," Anne said. "With diplomacy and rules and adults who know what they're doing." "But I helped too, right?" "I made first contact first." "You did, sweetheart," Robert said. "You showed them that humans can be kind and fierce at the same time." "That's important." Ruby thought about this. "Do you think Commander Hollis is okay?" "He was nice to me." "I'm sure he is," Anne said. "And I think he's probably telling his people that you were right all along." She was. At that moment, Commander Hollis was in a meeting with the entire Dravian High Command, explaining exactly why Earth was the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. Not because of weapons or technology, but because of a 7-year-old girl who made friends with honey badgers and had an entire community ready to go to war to protect her. 6 months later, the world had changed. The United Nations had established the First Contact Protocol Division. Every government on Earth knew about the Dravians now. Humanity had officially joined the galactic community, though no one was quite sure what that meant yet. Ruby Watson became the youngest ambassador in human history, though the title was mostly ceremonial. She still went to school, still did homework, still played with Scraps and the dogs, but now she also video called with alien diplomats and helped translate human culture for species who didn't understand why humans liked puppies. On this particular morning, Ruby sat in the living room wearing her best dress. A formal delegation from the Dravian Empire was coming to Earth, not to invade, to apologize, and to establish a treaty. The doorbell rang. Robert answered it. Commander Hollis stood there, but this time he wore formal diplomatic robes instead of armor. Officer Nina was with him. Behind them stood Admiral Grant and a dozen others Ruby didn't recognize. "Hello, Ruby," Hollis said. "It's good to see you again, Commander Hollis." Ruby hugged him before anyone could stop her. He went stiff for a moment, then carefully hugged back. Scraps watched from his position on the couch. He remembered these aliens. He made a warning sound just to remind them who was in charge. They all took a step back. Good. The honey badger was satisfied. The formal meeting took place at the Watsons' dining room table, which seemed appropriate since that's where peace had first been discussed. Representatives from the U.S. government were there. So were diplomats from China, Russia, Brazil, and a dozen other countries via video link. The entire world was watching through cameras set up in the corner. Admiral Grant spoke first. "On behalf of the Dravian Empire, I formally apologize for our actions. We came to your world with hostile intent. We threatened your people. We attempted to harm a child. These actions violated the basic principles of civilized behavior." "Apology accepted," said President Williams, who had flown in from Washington specifically for this meeting, provided it comes with guarantees that it won't happen again. "We have placed Earth under permanent protection status," Admiral Grant continued. "No Dravian ship may enter your solar system without explicit permission. We have shared this designation with the other spacefaring species. Earth is now recognized as a protected world inhabited by a developing but formidable species." "Formidable," President Williams repeated, looking amused. "That's a polite word for what you actually think." Nina spoke up. "We think humans are terrifying but also fascinating. You're unlike any species we've encountered. You bond with predators. You protect your young with entire communities. You adapt to any environment. You turn your enemies into friends. These traits make you both dangerous and valuable as allies. So you want an alliance," Ann Watson said from her seat. She'd been listening quietly, but now she leaned forward. "What do you really want from us?" The aliens exchanged looks. Hollis answered. "We want to learn from you. Our empire has conquered worlds through force. We've never befriended anyone. We don't know how to do what you do, making family from strangers, turning threats into protectors, building communities that defend each other." "You want us to teach you how to make friends," Ruby said. "Yes," Hollis admitted. "Exactly that." Ruby looked at her parents. Robert shrugged. Anne smiled. President Williams looked like he was trying not to laugh. "I can do that," Ruby said confidently, "but you have to actually mean it. You can't fake being friends. We mean it," Nina assured her. "Ruby, you changed our entire civilization. Before we met you, we thought power came from weapons and conquest. Now we understand it comes from connection and community. You showed us that by being kind to us even after we threatened you." "I was kind because you seemed sad," Ruby explained. "You were far from home and confused and didn't understand Earth. That's hard. I wanted to help." The simple honesty of her words hit the room like a physical force. Here was a child who had been threatened by alien invaders, and her response was compassion because they seemed sad. The diplomats from various countries looked at each other, perhaps wondering if they could ever be that graceful. "The treaty we propose is simple," Admiral Grant said, pulling out a data pad. "We will share technology and knowledge. You will share cultural wisdom and social structures. We will protect Earth from other hostile species. You will teach us how to build alliances instead of empires." "That seems fair," President Williams said, "though I want it on record that if any species threatens Earth again, we'll defend ourselves with extreme prejudice." "We would expect nothing less," Hollis said. "We've added a warning to Earth's designation in the Galactic database. It translates roughly to, inhabited by pack-bonding persistence hunters who domesticate apex predators. Approach with respect or not at all. Ruby giggled. That makes us sound scary. You are scary, Nina said seriously. But in a way that makes others want to be your friends rather than your enemies. That's a rare gift. The formal treaty was signed. Humans and Dravians were now officially allies. Technology exchanges would begin within the month. Cultural ambassadors would be traded. Earth had joined the galactic community not through conquest or submission, but through the actions of a 7-year-old girl and her honey badger. After the signing, there was a reception. Ruby gave the aliens a tour of the property, showing them the chicken coop and the barn and the fields. She introduced them to all the animals. The aliens were polite but visibly nervous around everything, especially the chickens. They're just chickens, Ruby said. They can't hurt you. They're descended from dinosaurs, Nina muttered. Everything on this planet is descended from something terrifying. Scraps followed the group, making sure the aliens knew he was watching. At one point, Admiral Grant tried to pet him. Scraps allowed it for exactly 3 seconds before making a warning sound. The Admiral withdrew his hand quickly. Scraps only likes family, Ruby explained. Maybe if you visit more, he'll decide you're family too. That would be an honor, Admiral Grant said. And he meant it. As the sun set over Montana, the two species sat together in the Watsons' backyard. Robert grilled burgers and vegetables. Anne made her famous potato salad. Ruby taught the aliens how to play frisbee, which they were terrible at. The dogs ran in circles, excited by all the activity. Scraps dug holes and ignored everyone. Commander Hollis sat next to Robert at the picnic table. Your daughter is remarkable. All children are remarkable if you give them the chance to be, Robert said. Ruby just had a more unusual opportunity than most. How did you raise her to be so fearless and kind at the same time? We taught her that the world is dangerous but beautiful, that people are complicated but usually trying their best. That strength includes compassion. Robert flipped a burger, and we let her bond with a honey badger, which probably taught her more about courage than we ever could. The honey badger is a good teacher? The honey badger is terrifying, Robert said flatly. But he loves Ruby and Ruby loves him. That's what matters. Later, as the aliens prepared to return to their ship, Ruby gave each of them a gift. For Commander Hollis, a drawing of him and Scraps. For Officer Nina, a rock she'd painted to look like Earth. For Admiral Grant, a photograph of the whole group at dinner. So you remember, she said, that we're friends now. Admiral Grant looked at the photograph. In it, humans and aliens sat around a table sharing food and smiling. A honey badger sat under the table, probably plotting violence. 2 dogs lounged nearby. It was chaotic and strange and perfect. I will treasure this, he said, and I will show it to anyone who doubts that humans are worth knowing. The ships left that night, rising into the sky with lights that looked like stars. Ruby watched from her bedroom window with Scraps curled up beside her. The honey badger was purring, which meant he was content. The aliens were gone, but they'd be back. They were friends now. In orbit, the Dravian fleet prepared to return home. Admiral Grant sent one final message to the High Command. It was brief, mission successful. First contact established. Earth is classified as protected ally. Notes for future reference. Humans are dangerous, compassionate, adaptable, and should never be underestimated. Also avoid honey badgers at all costs. Admiral Grant signing off. Back on Earth, Ruby fell asleep thinking about space and aliens and adventure. Scraps snored beside her, dreaming whatever honey badgers dream about. Probably violence, but gentle, protective violence. The kind that keeps small girls safe from anything that might hurt them. Robert and Anne checked on her one last time before going to bed themselves. They saw their daughter sleeping peacefully with her fierce little guardian beside her. We raised her right, Anne whispered. We did, Robert agreed, though I think Scraps deserves some credit too. They closed the door quietly. Outside, the stars shone bright. Earth had joined the galaxy, and the galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate a species that makes friends with honey badgers. Somewhere in deep space, the warning about Earth spread from species to species. Some thought it was exaggerated. Others took it seriously. But everyone agreed on one thing. Those humans were interesting. Dangerous, yes, but interesting. And maybe, just maybe, worth being friends with. The end. Thanks for watching.